Hi there, gang. I am going to try to take care of today's task with another video. There seems to be a creepy crud going around. So, along with the fact that down the road you could revisit this information, in addition to that, it should help the kids who are unfortunately absent. Okay, so we're looking at what makes good people do bad things. It's from Common Lit, if you recall. And this is going to be one of our secondary sources, actually the first secondary source, because this is our first secondary source. Now, you may eventually use something from this essay. You may not. Okay? Some of you will use it. Some of you will not. It does, however, have related ideas that could be used. We will gather numerous secondary sources. That does not mean you will use or cite all of them within your paper. And we also have our primary source, just to refresh your memory about that. Our primary source is the novel itself. I always abbreviate it, LOTF, and when I'm handwriting, I underline it. Now, keep in mind, when you type that in your papers, you have to type out Lord of the Flies, capital L, T, and F. And it has to be italicized if you type. All right? So right now, you don't know a lot about the novel because we have not begun to read it yet. We're just working on the context. Namely, that the author, William Golding, he wrote the novel to show we all have the same seed of evil, and we make a choice. We choose to suppress that seed of evil, and when we have evil thoughts, we push them away and do the right thing instead. SUPPRESS is suppress, I hope. Or the other possibility, the other option we have is to set that seed of evil free. Loose it on the world. Okay, that is set free. Now, this article is specifically going to explore the conclusions that a psychologist named Philip Zimbardo, the conclusions that he reached about human nature, what makes humans tick. The connection between the information within this article and the novel is right here with Golding's purpose for writing. Golding wrote the novel to share his conclusions about human nature. So when we see a similarity between Golding's conclusions and Zimbardo's conclusions, then we have something from Zimbardo that we can use to support what Golding said. Because Golding was no psychologist, but Zimbardo was. So we use the psychology expert to support Golding's conclusions that he shares throughout the novel. So we're looking for things that tie in with Golding's purpose for writing. What Golding believed about human nature, that we all have the same seed of evil. We choose to suppress it or set it free. All right. Now, we talked in class a little bit about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Dr. Jekyll was a well-known, excellent doctor. He drank a potion and it turned him into Mr. Hyde, who was deformed and evil and killed people. And the theme of the story, Jekyll and Hyde, which you have not read, the theme of that story is also about human nature. And the conclusion about human nature that the theme expresses is that we all have a good side and a bad side. The good side being Dr. Jekyll, the bad side being Dr. Hyde. And that ties in directly with what Golding believes, that all humans have that seed of evil. It's in there. The evil is inside of us. We either choose to suppress it and be the Dr. Jekyll, or we set it free, which makes us Mr. Hyde. So while we go through here, let's highlight some of the things that relate. Okay? In line 4, Zimbardo says that just the right dose of certain social situations can transform ordinarily good people into evildoers. And this is what happened with the American soldiers who abused prisoners at, sorry, my cheat sheet's gone here, at Abu Ghraib. Okay? Zimbardo, who is an emeritus psychology professor, that just means he's retired, but they keep him technically on staff because they love him so much. It's an honor. At Stanford University, he highlighted how these American soldiers transformed into their evil sides, their Mr. Hydes, because the situation in which they found themselves enabled them to transform and set the evil that would have, prior to now, have been suppressed. They set it free. Okay? And this Zimbardo was an expert witness for these trials. So when we're looking at a secondary source, we want to find the most well-renowned experts we can. And this is certainly one of them. Okay. Now, this next section I highlighted, and the whole thing is pretty important. Let's talk about it. If something is permeable, it means it's fluid. Okay? We're able to pass through it. If something is permeable, as in maybe fabric, we can see through it. So he says the line between good and evil is permeable. We can move across it. We all have the capacity for love and evil. And that is exactly what Golding is trying to express or share throughout Lord of the Flies. Pardon me. It's the situation that brings it out. Okay? I told you earlier that I was watching The Inside Man on Netflix. And regarding this idea that we all have good and evil inside of us, and depending on the situation, it can bring the evil out. In Inside Man, the lead character said something like this, and I'll read it to you twice. He said, "Everyone is a murderer. You just have to meet the right person." Meaning that the circumstances in which you find yourself could cause you to become a murderer. Everyone is a murderer. You just have to meet the right person. And hopefully we never do. Okay? Now, this next section, this whole thing is very, very useful. Here he's talking about classical, in fact, the classic electric shock experiment by social psychologist Stanley Milgram, PhD, showed that when given an order by someone in authority, people would deliver what they believed to be extreme levels of electrical shock to other study participants who answered questions incorrectly. So if someone who we perceive to be an authority gives us directions, even though they are asking us to do something with which we do not agree, we are likely to do it because we perceive that person to be an authority. Now, paragraph 5. Zimbardo said the experiment provides several lessons about how situations can foster evil. And in the novel, you're going to see how certain situations can foster or bring about evil. How can situations make people turn evil? Okay? An ideology is a way of thinking, a set of beliefs. So if you are someone in charge, you give people a new set of beliefs and give them that new set of beliefs that justifies or proves that these extreme actions, which we would prior have thought evil, are in fact now justified or right. You will see that happen in the novel. Okay, let's move on to the second item. Make people take a small first step toward a harmful act with a minor, trivial action, and then gradually increase those small actions. You're going to see the boys on the island gradually start to embrace their evil side. At first, they are small, minor, trivial, seemingly small actions. But then you'll see how it evolves. And gradually, by degrees, they become more and more and more evil. And they get used to the evil gradually as time passes. So if you were to talk in your research paper about how the boys gradually embrace evil, you could use this detail from this secondary source to support your observation. You could use this second detail, and that would be your proof. Okay? You'll see the people who eventually are in charge. They come to seem like just authorities. And by just, we mean justified or right. Justified or right. Eventually, certain situations where a once compassionate leader is turned into a dictator that'll give us a situation wherein people will embrace the evil. Okay, so definitely you'll see a leader in the book who gradually assumes more and more and more power until he is telling everyone what to do. Okay? It's also helpful if you want to get people to embrace their evil side to provide them with unclear or vague, unclear, or constantly changing roles. Okay? Constantly, you can relabel the situation. The roles on the island, the roles that the boys assume, those roles are ever changing. And their actions are ever changing. And eventually, they legitimize or prove to be logical this whole new set of beliefs known as an ideology. So you're going to see things in the novel with which this could be your proof. Provide people with social models of compliance. Okay? To conform is to act like everyone else. To be compliant is to do what you're told and conform and be like everybody else. Okay? So as one person starts to follow this new leader, it gives that leader power, and others see that compliance and may follow suit. Some more easily than others. Okay? Now this next one, allow dissent, which means different opinions. And this is how I'm annotating. You see me annotating. We talk about that all the time. Different, D-I-F-F-E-R-E-N-T, opinions. Allow that. But only if that person who has a differing opinion eventually does what you have instructed him or her to do. And this last one reminds me of gang mentality in our society. Actually, they all do. But this one in particular, once you are embroiled in a gang, you cannot get out. Exiting the situation is difficult. You may be harmed. Your loved ones may be harmed. Okay? So particularly notable, Zimbardo said, is that people are seduced or tempted into evil. Evil is tempting. Because resisting it is often hard. Okay? People are tempted to become evil and degrade others. They semantically change their perception of what it means to be a victim of the evil act and change the relationship of the aggressor to their aggression. So killing or hurting becomes the same as helping. When you're killing or hurting, you're helping that person you perceive to be an authority. Okay? For example, in a 1975 experiment by psychologist Albert Bandura, college students were told they'd work with students from another school on a group task. In one condition, they overheard an assistant calling the other students animals. And in another condition, they overheard an assistant calling the other students nice. Bandura found students were more apt to deliver what they believed were increased levels of electrical shock to the other students if they had heard them called animals. They felt more justified. People's aggression can also increase when they feel anonymous. And we talked previously about anonymity. We wear masks. Masks make us anonymous. People can't see that it's Mrs. Schwabenbauer anymore because all they can see is my mask. Okay? If they wear a uniform, a hood, or a mask, they feel anonymous. And they can be people they would not hitherto have been. They can act on these evil impulses they would not have acted on before. We are going to watch a clip of a movie called The Mask where you see this happen. And you will see boys in the novel who wear uniforms. You also see boys who are in a group and they wear not hoods, but they wear choir robes. And it makes the individuals in that group anonymous. They are not individuals any longer. They are part of a group. Pardon me. And that minimizes, right here in paragraph 10, social responsibility. Nobody knows who you are. So therefore, you are not individually liable or to blame or responsible. There's also a group effect when all of you are masked. It provides a fear in other people because they can't see you and you lose that individuality or that humanity. For example, an experiment in 1974 by Harvard anthropologist John Watson evaluated 23 cultures to determine whether warriors who changed their appearance, such as with war paint or masks, treated their victims differently. This is something you could definitely use to support what happens to the boys in the novel when they paint their faces and don their masks. 80% of warriors, right here, in these cultures were found to be more destructive. For example, killing, torturing, or mutilating their victims. 80% more likely than unpainted or unmasked warriors. It's not just seeing, what's more, a person's anonymity can be induced by acting in an anonymity conferring environment that adds to the pleasure of destruction, vandalism, and the power of being in control. So certain environments, certain situations allow people an escape from their morals, their ethics, doing what is right. Okay? It's not just seeing people hurt. It's doing things that you have a sense that you are controlling behavior of other people in ways you typically don't. Control is exhilarating. I don't know if I spelled that right. I'm going to check it. exhilarating. Okay. You're going to see in chapter, I can't remember exactly which chapter, there's a little boy on the beach, and it says that he was overcome by the ability to dig little tunnels in the sand that the water would fill and push these bugs around. The water would carry the bugs around, and it was exhilarating for him to be able to master control over another living thing, is what it says in the book. Zimbardo noticed that in his own simulated jail experiment in 1971, which coincidentally was the year I was born, the Stanford prison experiment, in which college students played the roles of prisoners or guards, and the guards became brutal and abusive toward prisoners after just 6 days, leading Zimbardo to prematurely end the experiment. It showed that the institutional forces and peer pressure led normal student volunteer guards to disregard the potential harm of their actions on other student prisoners. Institutional forces, the forces in the institution, also known as situations, certain situations. And peer pressure, which is definitely at play on the island with our boys in Lord of the Flies. So when you talk about how peer pressure plays a role in how the boys change and embrace their evil side, this could be your support. And paragraph 15 is awesome. You don't need a motive, Zimbardo said. All you really need is a situation that facilitates or enables moving across that line of good and evil. The same social, psychological processes, de-individualization, anonymity of place, dehumanization, role-playing and social modeling, moral disengagement, and group conformity. Those all acted in the Stanford experiment, and those are all reasons why the American soldiers in Abu Ghraib tortured Iraqi prisoners. So is it a few bad apples that spoil a barrel? That's what we want to believe. That we could never be a bad apple, Zimbardo said. We're the good ones in the barrel, but people can be influenced, regardless of their intention to resist. And that is definitely something that could be used in your paper. There are kids in the novel who try to resist. And even though they try, they are still sometimes influenced. As such, the Abu Ghraib soldiers' mental state, such as stress, fear, boredom, and heat, exhaustion, coupled with no supervision, no training, and no accountability, may have further contributed to their evil actions. Excuse me. I argue situational forces dominate most of us at various times in our lives. And situational forces definitely dominate the boys on the island. Even though we'd like to believe we're each that singular hero who can resist those powerful external pressures, just like Joe Darby, who was actually the one who blew the whistle and exposed what was going on in Abu Ghraib.